The Spider's Thread. By Ryunosuke Akutagawa. One day, the Buddha was walking alone along the edge of a lotus pond in paradise. The lotus flowers blooming in the pond were all as white as pearls, and from their golden centers emanated an indescribably pleasant fragrance that filled the air without pause. It must have been morning in paradise. After a while, the Buddha stopped at the edge of the pond and happened to look down through the gaps between the lotus leaves covering the water's surface. Beneath this lotus pond in paradise lay the depths of hell, and through the crystal clear water, one could clearly see the sights of the Sanzu River and the Mountain of Needles, as if peering through a spyglass. As the Buddha observed the scene in hell, his gaze fell upon a man named Kandata, writhing among the other sinners. This Kandata had been a great criminal, committing acts such as murder and arson, yet he had done one good deed in his life. Once, while walking through a deep forest, he saw a small spider crawling along the roadside. He was about to raise his foot to crush it when he suddenly reconsidered. No, this is a living creature, small though it may be. To take its life needlessly would be too cruel. With this thought, he spared the spider's life. As the Buddha looked down at the conditions in hell, he remembered this single good deed of Kandata's. Thinking that for this one act of kindness, he should try to save the man from hell if possible, he looked around and noticed a spider in paradise spinning a beautiful silver thread on a jade-green lotus leaf. The Buddha gently took hold of the spider's thread and lowered it straight down through the pure white lotus blossoms, letting it descend all the way to the depths of hell. 2. In the depths of hell, Kandata was struggling in the pool of blood, sinking and resurfacing among the other sinners. Everywhere he looked was pitch dark, and the only things faintly visible in the gloom were the terrifying needles of the Mountain of Needles, glinting ominously. His despair was beyond words. Moreover, hell was as silent as a grave, and the only sounds were the occasional feeble sighs of the damned. By the time a person falls to hell, they have already been tormented by countless punishments and no longer have the strength even to cry out. Even the hardened criminal Kandata could do nothing but flail about in the pool of blood, choking as helplessly as a dying frog. Then, at one moment, Kandata happened to lift his head and gaze at the sky above the pool of blood. Through the silent darkness, he saw a single silver thread from a spider descending smoothly from far above, glowing faintly as if afraid of being seen. At the sight of this, Kandata instinctively clapped his hands in joy. If he could grasp this thread and climb up, he might be able to escape from hell. Perhaps, if things went well, he could even reach paradise. Then he would never again have to be driven up the Mountain of Needles or submerged in the pool of blood. With this hope, Kandata immediately grasped the spider's thread tightly with both hands and began climbing with all his might. Being a skilled criminal, he was well accustomed to such actions. However, the distance between hell and paradise spanned thousands of miles. No matter how much he hurried, climbing was no easy feat. After a while, exhausted, Kandata could climb no further. He had no choice but to pause and rest, dangling in the middle of the thread, and looked down at the scene far below. Thanks to his desperate effort, the pool of blood where he had been was now hidden in the depths of darkness. Even the terrifying Mountain of Needles, faintly glowing, was now beneath his feet. At this rate, escaping from hell might not be as difficult as he had thought. Clutching the spider's thread with both hands, Kandata laughed in triumph, a sound he had not made in years. However, just then, he noticed something alarming. Below him, countless sinners were climbing up the thread after him, forming a long line like a column of ants. Kandata was so shocked and terrified that for a while, he simply stared with his mouth agape, his eyes darting back and forth. This thin spider's thread was barely enough to support him alone. How could it possibly hold the weight of so many others? If it snapped, he would plummet straight back down into hell. That would be a disaster. Meanwhile, more and more sinners continued climbing, swarming upwards from the depths of the pool of blood. They climbed in a single file, inching their way up the fragile, glowing thread. If nothing were done, the thread would surely break in the middle, sending them all tumbling down. At that moment, Kandata shouted in a loud voice. "Hey, you sinners! This spider's thread is mine. Who gave you permission to climb it? Get down! Get down at once!" No sooner had these words left his mouth than the thread suddenly snapped with a sharp snap right where Kandata was clinging. He had no time to react. In the blink of an eye, he plummeted headfirst into the darkness, spinning like a top as he fell, vanishing into the abyss of hell. After that, all that remained was the silver spider's thread, glimmering faintly in the moonless, starless sky of hell, swaying gently in the void. 3. The Buddha stood by the lotus pond in paradise and watched this entire sequence of events in silence. When Kandata finally fell back into the pool of blood, the Buddha's face took on a look of sorrow, and he slowly resumed his walk. Perhaps, from the Buddha's perspective, Kandata's selfish desire to save only himself, and the fitting punishment he received, seemed utterly pitiful. However, the lotus flowers in paradise paid no attention to such matters. The pearl-white blossoms swayed gently around the Buddha's feet, and from their golden centers, an indescribably sweet fragrance continued to fill the air. By then, it was nearly noon in paradise.